Hey, Professor Homa, welcome to part 7 of our Buffalo Wild Wings. We just finished up our composite in Photoshop that we worked in RGB color. We're going to make a TIFF file, but what we're going to do is we're going to turn off some of these layers so that we can use the nice crisp EPS images and text from InDesign. We're going to import an EPS into InDesign, and then we'll even type this in InDesign so we have nice crisp text. You might be saying, why are we doing that? It's already laid out. That just seems like more work than we have to. And I guess the only way to kind of explain this is here's my finished layout of my other one in InDesign. And this is, if I zoom in on this, and I'll zoom in real close, this is the Buffalo Wild Wings embedded in the TIFF file. If I just save the TIFF the way it is, and you could see it's at 200 resolution, even 300, it wouldn't be really great resolution. It converts the vector artwork into pixels, which isn't the best quality for vector artwork. It's all sharp lines and curves, and it just doesn't look as crisp as it would if it was the actual EPS artwork. So if I zoom out, and here's the EPS image that's the way we're going to do it, and I'll just put it right next to it, you should see quite a difference. The original EPS image, if you zoom in on it, you could see is really crisp. It's crisp vector artwork, and that's what we want. We don't want to compromise all that work we did tracing this stuff, or, you know, and again, it would be creating your own artwork, not Buffalo Wild Wings, but you can see we want the best of both worlds, so that's why we're going to do that. That's why we're going to take our time and make sure that we don't just embed, even though it was easier, it was for position only, it was easier to put our logo in there. We could sample colors, we know where we want things, but we're not going to have our TIFF file with this in here. We're going to have this thing over top, and you know, it's more work, but that's the way it is in production. So even our text down here, this is going to be text that we put in here in InDesign. We're not going to do this. We're not going to use the text we did in Photoshop, even though it looks nice. Unless we did like a lot of effects like bevel and emboss, we might. So I'm going to go back to Photoshop, and I'll show you how to turn this off. Now, the only problem with this is if we turn off this logo right now, if we turn off these layers, we lose the shadow too. And you might say, well, can we put the shadow on everything? And let me just show you a trick we could do with these effects. I'm going to go on this effect for the icon, and I'm going to right click and do, not on the layer but on the effects, and do create layer. And here it is down at the bottom. Very nondescript thing, you probably never even thought about it. You create layer. What it does is it puts the outer glow on its own layer so that you could turn off the logo and just have the outer glow there, so it'll still be part of the TIFF file. Now that doesn't give you the ability to move the logo around in InDesign, but that's not the intent. The intent is if this is fine and you show a client this is what it's going to look like, you're going to make sure that you know this is where it's going to be. So I'm going to do the same thing with each of these. With the text that's here, I'm going to right click and I'm going to create layer, and make sure I do it. I'm doing it in the wrong place. I have to do it on the effects because I'm making a layer from the effects. So create layer, and it's going to do it for the drop shadow, and I'll hit OK, and it should say like Buffalo text drop shadow. And then same thing with the wings. I'm not sure what it's going to do with the color overlay because I made it black. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn off the color overlay because I'm just going to make it black. Well, let's just see what it does. I'm not sure what it's really going to do. I don't think it's going to be able to make a color overlay layer, but I'll try create layers. I don't know. I guess it made something, but I don't even really need that. So I'm going to turn that off. But I do want the outer glow, and I'm going to turn off that, and I'm going to turn off the main text for Buffalo text. So that's what I want. I want the drop shadow, I want the outer glow, and I want that. Because when we make the EPS, we'll make the text black if that was our intent. So, and we'll make the text white too. So we just want this so that we could put our logo right on top of this. And one thing I should have done is check the scale of the logo when it came in, so we saw how much we scaled the logo, but now we'll just have to do it by eye when we bring it in. Same thing down here. I'm just going to leave the drop shadow. So for this text down here, I'm going to right click, and I'm going to do, and again I keep clicking on the wrong part. Make sure you click on the effects, and it says some effects cannot be reproduced. So I don't know if it can always do the. Oh, it did do the stroke here, but we're not going to do the stroke either. We're going to turn the stroke off, and we're just going to leave the drop shadow. We're going to put the stroke on it in InDesign. So that's what we're going to do. So the rest of this is all ready to go to be saved as a TIFF file. So again, we have everything there. We could always put it back if we need to, or if we need to make changes. But for now, this is how the TIFF file is going to be saved. So I'm going to just save my Photoshop file, so I have everything saved. And then I'm going to do File, And again, one thing you want to be careful, if you once you do separate these layers, you can't put them back as layer effects. They're separate layers, so you got to move them around. So if you want them, you know, you could almost make a second file, you know, where you know, called like you know, expand effects or something, you know, if you really had to worry about that. But for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a save as, and I'm going to save my TIFF file, which is going to be flattened. So I'm going to save it in this layer here, and I'm going to make sure I go to Format, and I'm going to go to TIFF. And TIFF is just a way to transfer pixel-based artwork that's going to be flattened, and it's used for print. So I'm going to uncheck layers down here. And if it puts the word copy in there, you can just get rid of the word copy. It just does that to protect you so you don't save over your Photoshop file. And I'm going to hit save. And if you don't hit layers, they give you another chance here to discard layers. And I'll save that TIFF file. And it's not here. It doesn't show up here, so you have to open it. And why would you open it? Well, I'm gonna open up my file. Make sure I open up the right one. And I'm gonna open up the TIFF. And there it is. It looks just like the other one, except it's flattened. Everything's on the background. It's a flattened layer. And the only thing I'm going to do is go to Image Mode CMYK. And I'm going to change the mode to CMYK color so it separates on the 4 CMYK plates. It transfers better. You might see a little shift in color here and there, but for the most part it looks pretty good. If you had to make any last minute changes, sharpen anything, you know, it would do it to the whole image. The whole composite it would do it to. So you'd have to, you know that you wanted the whole thing sharpened a little bit. So that's all I have to do here. I could just close this and save it. And my TIFF is saved. And I'm going to close my postcard, my original Photoshop postcard. And what I'm going to be doing next is going into InDesign. So I'll stop here and I'll start working on InDesign next.